Maya Rodriguez wiped down the scarred formica counter at Tony's diner, her hands moving in practice circles that had become as automatic as breathing. At 28, she'd learned to make herself invisible, the kind of woman whose eyes skipped over crowds without registering faces, whose wardrobe consisted of faded jeans, worn sneakers, and plain t-shirts that screamed working poor. Her dark hair, pulled back in a simple ponytail, showed no trace of the soldier she'd once been. The morning rush had finally subsided, leaving her alone with the hum of the industrial refrigerator and the persistent anxiety that had become her constant companion. She pulled her phone from her apron pocket, checking the time. 7:45. Diego's chemotherapy session started at 9, and she'd promised to stop by before her shift ended. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Table 6 needs refills. Tommy Nguyen called from the kitchen pass-through, his perpetually cheerful face appearing in the window. At 22, he was everything Maya wasn't. Optimistic, talkative, and convinced that the world was fundamentally good. And you've got that look again. The one where you're counting money in your head. Maya forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Just thinking about groceries. It was a lie. She was thinking about the envelope tucked in her locker, the one with the hospital billing department's logo emblazoned across the top. $3,000 for Diego's last round of treatment. Another $5,000 due before they'd schedule the next one. Her savings account held $473, and her next paycheck wouldn't clear for 5 days. The bell above the door chimed, and Maya's trained eyes cataloged the newcomers before her conscious mind registered them. 3 men in dark suits, moving with the careful precision of people accustomed to being watched. Private security, she noted automatically, observing the slight bulge of concealed weapons beneath tailored jackets, the way they positioned themselves to maintain clear sight lines to the entrance. Behind them walked a man who commanded attention without seeking it. Victor Chin stood perhaps 6 feet tall, lean in an expensive charcoal suit that probably cost more than Maya made in 3 months. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his posture spoke of confidence bordering on arrogance, and his eyes, sharp and analytical, swept the diner with the assessing gaze of someone who evaluated everything. Maya felt her pulse quicken, old instincts rising unbidden. The exits were clear. The kitchen had a back door. The security detail was professional but not military. Their positioning was good but predictable. She forced herself to breathe slowly, pushing down the hypervigilance that years of therapy hadn't managed to eliminate. "You taking that table?" Tommy asked, nodding toward where Victor and his entourage had settled into a booth near the window. "Yeah." Maya grabbed a coffee pot and menu, willing her hands not to shake as she approached. She made it 3 steps before the car backfired outside. The sound cracked through the diner like a gunshot, and Maya's body reacted before her brain could override it. She dropped into a crouch, coffee pot clattering to the floor, her eyes scanning for threats, her breathing suddenly shallow and rapid. The diner spun around her, and for one terrible moment, she wasn't in Seattle anymore. She was back in that village, watching everything fall apart. "Hey, you okay?" Tommy's voice cut through the fog, his hand on her shoulder gentle but grounding. Maya forced herself upright, heat flooding her cheeks as she realized everyone was staring. "I'm fine. Just startled me." She retrieved the coffee pot with trembling hands, aware of Victor Chin's intense gaze following her movements. "Take a minute," Tommy whispered, but Maya shook her head. She couldn't afford minutes. She couldn't afford anything. She approached Victor's table with her customer service smile firmly in place, the one that said she was fine, everything was fine, nothing to see here. "Good morning. Can I start you with coffee, please?" Victor's voice was measured, professional, but his eyes remained fixed on her face with an intensity that made her want to disappear. "Black." As Maya poured, her hands finally steady, she became aware of the drunk at the counter. He'd been nursing the same cup for the last hour, his belligerence growing with each passing minute. Now he was on his feet, swaying slightly, his voice rising as he berated the young waitress who'd refused him another refill. "I said I want more coffee, sweetheart. Or are you too stupid to understand English?" The girl, barely 20, backed away, fear plain on her face. The security detail tensed, hands moving subtly toward their weapons, but Maya was already moving. Years of training took over, bypassing conscious thought. She positioned herself between the drunk and the waitress, her stance casual but calculated. "Sir, why don't you have a seat? I'll get you some water." "I don't want water, I want." "I know what you want." Maya's voice dropped, quiet but carrying an edge that made the drunk pause. "But what you need is to sit down and take a breath. Nobody here wants trouble, and neither do you." Something in her tone, in the absolute certainty with which she spoke, penetrated the drunk's haze. He blinked, confusion crossing his face, then slowly sank back onto his stool. Maya turned back to Victor's table, only to find him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Your order? How did you do that?" Victor asked instead of answering. "Do what?" "Defuse that situation. My security was about to intervene, but you had it handled in seconds." He leaned forward slightly. "That's not a skill you learned serving coffee." Maya's stomach dropped. "I've worked in restaurants for years." "You learned to read people." "No." Victor's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "That was training. Military, if I had to guess. The way you positioned yourself, controlled the space, used your voice as a weapon." He paused. "The way you reacted to that car earlier. I don't know what you're talking about." Maya kept her voice level despite the panic clawing at her throat. "Are you ready to order or not?" Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Victor studied her for another long moment, then did something unexpected. He smiled, a real smile that transformed his severe features. "I'm Victor Chun. I run Chin Technologies downtown. I'm looking for a personal assistant, someone who can think on their feet and handle high-pressure situations." He pulled a business card from his jacket. "The position pays $80,000 a year, plus benefits." Maya stared at the card like it might bite her. "I'm a waitress." "You're wasted as a waitress." Victor's tone was matter-of-fact. "I watched you assess my security detail when we walked in. You cataloged exits, identified potential threats, and maintained situational awareness of the entire room while serving customers. That's not normal, Miss Rodriguez." Maya Rodriguez. The name felt heavy in her mouth. "Ms. Rodriguez, I need someone with your particular skills. Someone who sees what others miss." He slid the card across the table. "Think about it." Maya's phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Diego. Asterisk treatment getting moved up. They need payment today or they'll cancel. Asterisk. She looked at the card, at Victor Chin's expectant face, at the security detail still watching her with professional interest. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to stay invisible, to keep running from a past that had already destroyed her once. But Diego's face flashed in her mind, pale, thin, fighting a battle he shouldn't have to fight alone. "When would I start?" she heard herself ask. Victor's smile widened. "How about Monday?" 3 days later, Maya stood in the gleaming lobby of Chun Technologies, feeling like an imposter in borrowed clothes. The building was all glass and steel, soaring 40 stories into the Seattle sky, filled with people whose shoes probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. Her reflection in the polished marble floor showed a woman trying desperately to look like she belonged. "Ms. Rodriguez?" A woman approached, her heels clicking with authority. She was in her mid-30s, Korean-American, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "I'm Sophie Kim, head of security. Mr. Chin asked me to bring you up." Maya's pulse quickened. Security. Of course they'd vet her. Of course they'd dig into her background and find the gaps, the inconsistencies, the carefully constructed lies she'd built her new life on. "Is there a problem?" Maya asked carefully. Sophie's expression was professionally neutral. "Mr. Chin doesn't typically hire without my clearance. Your background check came back incomplete. Large gaps in your employment history. References that don't quite add up." She pressed the elevator button. "Want to tell me what you're hiding?" "I'm not hiding anything." The lie tasted bitter. "Everyone's hiding something, Ms. Rodriguez." Sophie stepped into the elevator, and Maya had no choice but to follow. "The question is whether what you're hiding will put Mr. Chen at risk." The elevator began its ascent, and Maya felt the walls closing in. This had been a mistake. She should never have come here, never have accepted Victor's offer, never have hoped that she could be anything other than what the military had made her. "I had some personal issues a few years back," Maya said finally. "I needed time to get my life together. That's all." "Personal issues." Sophie's tone suggested she didn't believe a word. the kind that involve tactical training and threat assessment. The elevator stopped on the 38th floor, doors opening to reveal an office that looked more like a luxury apartment than a workplace. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Elliott Bay, and minimalist furniture in blacks and grays created an atmosphere of controlled elegance. Victor rose from behind a massive desk, his suit today a deep navy that somehow made him look even more intimidating. Ms. Rodriguez. Welcome. I see you've met Sophie. She has concerns about my background check, Maya said bluntly. No point in pretending. Sophie has concerns about everything. It's why I pay her. Victor gestured to a chair. But I make my own decisions about who I trust. And my instincts about you are rarely wrong. Your instincts don't know anything about me. They know you're running from something. Victor's expression softened slightly. They know you're desperate enough to accept a job you're overqualified for from a man you don't trust. They know you have someone you're trying to protect. He paused. Your brother, Diego, correct? 19 years old, leukemia patient at Seattle General? Maya's blood turned to ice. You had no right. I had every right. You're going to be working closely with me, handling sensitive information, managing my schedule. I needed to know who you were. Victor's tone remained calm. I also know you served in the military, though the details of your service are classified above my clearance level. I know you received a discharge 7 years ago, and I know you've been working minimum wage jobs ever since despite having skills that could earn you 6 figures. Then you know I'm not what you need. Maya stood, fighting to keep her voice steady. I'm damaged goods, Mr. Chun. Whatever you think you saw in me, you're wrong. Sit down. It wasn't a request, and despite herself, Maya obeyed. Victor leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. I don't care about your past, Ms. Rodriguez. I care about whether you can do this job. Can you manage a complex schedule, handle difficult personalities, think strategically under pressure, and maintain absolute discretion? Yes. Can you work 18-hour days when necessary and still show up the next morning ready to do it again? Yes. Then we don't have a problem. Victor slid a contract across the desk. $80,000 a year, full medical and dental benefits that will cover your brother's treatments. Signing bonus of $10,000 that you'll receive with your first paycheck. He paused. I'm offering you a chance to stop running, Maya. The question is whether you're brave enough to take it. Maya stared at the contract, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. $10,000. Full medical coverage. A salary that would mean Diego could get the treatment he needed without her having to choose between his medicine and their rent. It was too good to be true. And in her experience, things that seemed too good to be true usually were. But Diego's text from that morning flashed in her mind. Asterisk, they're starting the new protocol today. Doc says it's our best shot. Love you, sis. Asterisk. Maya picked up the pen. Maya's first week at Chin Technologies felt like navigating a minefield blindfolded. The sleek glass offices, the hushed conversations about million-dollar deals, the casual references to technologies she only knew from classified briefings. Everything reminded her she didn't belong. Her office adjoined Victor's, a small space with a desk, computer, and a view that probably cost more than her annual salary at the diner. She spent her days managing his calendar, a complex puzzle of board meetings, investor calls, and social obligations that required military-level precision to coordinate. Sophie watched her constantly. Maya felt those sharp eyes tracking her movements, noting every hesitation, every moment her training showed through her civilian facade. The background check remained incomplete, a sword hanging over her head. On Wednesday, the construction crew on the 40th floor started jackhammering. The sound hit Maya like a physical blow, sharp, rhythmic, relentless. Her vision tunneled. Her breath came in short gasps. The walls closed in. She made it to the elevator before the panic attack truly hit, but the confined space only made it worse. The doors were closing when Victor's hand shot out, stopping them. Everyone out, he said quietly to the other passengers. Now. They obeyed without question, and suddenly Maya was alone with him in the stopped elevator, her back pressed against the wall, her entire body shaking. Breathe, Victor said, his voice calm and steady. Count with me. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. He didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations. Just stood there, breathing with her until the world stopped spinning. When the doors finally opened, he stepped out as if nothing had happened. Clear my schedule for the next hour. I need coffee. That night, over lukewarm takeout in his office at midnight, Victor told her about building his company from nothing after his business partner betrayed him. Maya found herself sharing carefully edited stories about growing up tough, about Diego, about learning to survive. It was the first real conversation she'd had in years, and it terrified her how much she wanted more. Then Cassandra Worth arrived at Friday's corporate dinner, a vision in designer silk and practiced smiles. She took Victor's arm with possessive ease, barely glancing at Maya except to say, "Make sure the car is ready at 10. But later, Maya caught Cassandra watching them through the crowd, her expression unreadable as Victor laughed at something Maya said. The look in Cassandra's eyes wasn't dismissive anymore. It was calculating. During Victor's presentation on the new surveillance system, Maya's blood ran cold. The technology on the screen, facial recognition algorithms, predictive tracking software, real-time data integration, looked exactly like the system her unit had used. The system that had identified the wrong targets. The system that had gotten everyone killed. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Asterisk heard you surfaced. Stay low. They're still looking. Doc asterisk. Maya deleted it immediately, but her hands shook for the rest of the presentation. That evening, Victor appeared in her office doorway. I visited your brother today. Maya's heart stopped. You what? Diego mentioned you served. That you came back different. Victor's expression was unreadable. Want to tell me about it? No. Maya shut down her computer, her movements mechanical. That's not part of my job description. Maya, good night, Mr. Chan. She left before he could see the tears in her eyes, before he could ask the questions she couldn't answer, before he could realize that the woman he'd hired was someone else's weapon, broken, discarded, and too dangerous to keep around. 3 weeks in, Maya had found her rhythm at Chin Technologies, but the carefully constructed walls around her life were developing cracks she couldn't patch fast enough. The engagement announcement hit the business pages on Monday morning. Victor Chun and Cassandra Worth, set to marry in 6 months. The article described it as a merger of two powerful families, complete with glossy photos of the perfect couple at various charity galas. Maya told herself the tightness in her chest was just anxiety. It had nothing to do with the way Victor's smile in those photos never reached his eyes. You'll need to coordinate with the wedding planner, Victor said that afternoon, his tone professionally distant. He hadn't met her eyes since the announcement went live. Cassandra wants weekly progress meetings. Of course. Maya made notes she'd never remember. Congratulations. Thank you. The words sounded hollow. Sophie's investigation intensified. She cornered Maya in the break room Thursday morning, laying out printed documents like evidence at a trial. Employment gap of 18 months. References that check out but feel scripted. A skill set that doesn't match your resume. Sophie leaned closer. I know military when I see it, Rodriguez. The question is what kind of military and why you're hiding it. I'm not hiding anything. Maya's standard lie. Everyone's hiding something, Sophie countered. I just need to know if your something will get Victor killed. Before Maya could respond, alarms blared throughout the building. Security briefing. Mandatory attendance. The conference room filled with tense executives as the head of corporate security outlined new threats, industrial espionage, data theft, physical security concerns. Maya listened with growing horror as he described tactical approaches, infiltration methods, and contingency protocols that were eerily familiar. Too familiar. The terminology, the methodology, the specific vulnerabilities being discussed. She'd heard this briefing before, 7 years ago, from her commanding officer before the mission that destroyed everything. Her vision started to tunnel. The walls were closing in again. She mumbled an excuse and fled to the bathroom, where she collapsed in a stall, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Hey. A woman's voice, calm and knowing. I'm coming in. Dr. Sarah Martinez knelt beside her, not touching but present. I'm a doctor. You're having a panic attack. You're safe. This will pass. Can't breathe. You are breathing. Your body just thinks you're not. Sarah's voice was steady, grounding. I recognize the signs. Combat PTSD, if I had to guess. How long since you've talked to someone about it? 7 years. The admission slipped out before Maya could stop it. That's too long to carry it alone. Sarah helped her stand. Whatever happened to you, you don't have to face it by yourself. But Sarah was wrong. Maya had been alone since the moment she refused that order, and she'd stay alone to keep everyone else safe from the wreckage she'd become. Victor was waiting when she emerged, his expression concerned. Maya, I'm fine. You're not fine. You haven't been fine since you walked into my office. He stepped closer. Let me help. You can't help with this. Maya's voice cracked. Nobody can. That afternoon, Sophie dropped a file on Maya's desk. Inside were photographs. Victor at the hospital, talking to Diego, laughing with her brother. The images were time-stamped from yesterday. He went back, Sophie said quietly. Been going every day this week. Your brother talks, and Victor listens. You might want to consider what secrets a sick 19-year-old might accidentally share about his mysterious sister. Maya's world tilted. Diego knew more than he should. The nightmares she couldn't hide. The way she'd come home from that last deployment broken. The discharge that destroyed her. If Victor kept visiting, kept asking questions, eventually Diego would tell him everything. And then Victor would know exactly what kind of damaged, dangerous person he'd brought into his life. That evening, Victor confronted her directly. Diego mentioned you were special forces. That something went wrong on your last mission. It's classified. Maya's standard deflection. I don't care about classified. Victor's frustration finally showed. I care about you walking around like you're waiting for the world to end. I care about the way you check exits and assess threats and carry yourself like a soldier even though you're pretending to be a secretary. I'm your assistant, not your project. Maya stood, gathering her things. My past is my business. Not when it affects your present. Victor moved to block her path. Not when you're clearly suffering and too stubborn to accept help. They stood inches apart, the air between them crackling with tension. For one dangerous moment, Maya wanted to tell him everything. The mission, the civilians, the choice she'd made, and the price she'd paid. But then her phone buzzed. Another message from Doc. Asterisk, they know where you are. Elena Zhao's people are asking questions. Be careful, asterisk. Elena Zhao, Victor's former business partner. The woman who'd stolen his company and left him bankrupt. The same woman whose Black Ops contracts Maya's unit had been assigned to protect 7 years ago. The contracts that ended when Maya refused the mission. Everything was connected, and Victor was standing at the center of a web he didn't even know existed. I need to go, Maya said, her voice hollow. Diego's expecting me. She left Victor standing there, questions unanswered, and walked out into the Seattle rain wondering how long she had before her past caught up with her present and destroyed everyone she'd tried so hard to protect. The gala celebrating Chun Technologies' new Department of Defense contract filled the grand ballroom with Seattle's elite. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over designer gowns and tailored tuxedos, while champagne flowed and business deals were sealed with handshakes worth millions. Maya hated every second of it. The cocktail dress Sophie had insisted she wear, a simple black number that somehow cost $800, restricted her movement and made her feel exposed. She stood near the wall, cataloging faces and exits out of habit, while Cassandra worked the room on Victor's arm like she owned him. Maybe she did. You must be the new assistant. Richard Chun materialized beside her, his silver hair and cold eyes marking him as Victor's father even before he introduced himself. My son has a tendency to collect strays. I trust you won't make the mistake of thinking you're anything more than temporary help. Before Maya could respond, she saw him. Jake Reaper Morrison stood across the ballroom, dressed in private security uniform, his scarred face half hidden in shadow. But Maya would know those eyes anywhere. The last eyes she'd seen before her unit was ambushed, before everything went to hell. Her heart stopped. Her training kicked in. She moved toward Victor, every instinct screaming danger. Then the lights went out. Chaos erupted in the darkness. Screams, breaking glass, the distinctive sound of military-grade flashbangs. Maya's body moved on pure instinct, her civilian identity shattering like the chandeliers falling around her. She disarmed the first attacker in 3 moves, using his own weapon to clear a path through panicking guests. Her mind calculated angles and trajectories, while her body executed techniques she'd sworn never to use again. She reached Victor just as Jake's team surrounded him. Well. Jake's voice cut through the chaos, cold and familiar. The ghost who got my brother killed. He struck Victor across the face with brutal efficiency, and Victor crumpled. Jake's men dragged him toward the service entrance while Maya fought to reach them, taking down 2 more contractors with lethal precision. But there were too many. They had Victor at the door when Jake turned back to her, his scarred face twisted with hatred. Elena sends her regards. Jake's smile was terrible. You destroyed our mission 7 years ago. Now we destroy what you love. They vanished through the exit with Victor unconscious between them. The entire kidnapping took less than 4 minutes. Maya stood in the wreckage of the ballroom, her cover completely blown, surrounded by shocked guests and security personnel. Sophie appeared through the smoke, weapon drawn, and found Maya holding a disarmed tactical rifle. Who the hell are you? Sophie demanded. Maya dropped the weapon. Someone who just lost everything. But that wasn't quite true. She'd lost everything 7 years ago. Tonight, she'd just lost her chance to pretend otherwise. The ballroom became a crime scene within minutes. Police swarmed through the wreckage while paramedics treated the injured. Maya sat in a side room, hands zip-tied, while FBI agents argued about jurisdiction and protocol. She'd been recognized, documented, exposed. Everything she'd run from had caught up in a single violent moment. Sophie pushed into the room, her expression unreadable. I convinced them you're not a suspect. But you need to start talking, Rodriguez. Now, I want a lawyer. Victor doesn't have time for lawyers. Sophie pulled up a chair, her voice dropping. Those men weren't random kidnappers. They were professionals, military contractors, and they knew exactly who you were. Maya closed her eyes. I was Special Forces. 7 years ago, I refused an unethical black ops mission. Civilians would have died. I said no, and my entire unit was killed in retaliation. They blamed me, discharged me, destroyed my life. She looked at Sophie. The man who took Victor, Jake Morrison, his brother died in that ambush. He's wanted revenge ever since. And Elena Zhao had the contract for the mission I refused. When my unit failed, she lost everything. Built her current company on resentment. Maya's voice was hollow. She hired Jake to kidnap Victor because I work for him now. This is my fault. Sophie processed this in silence. Then, the FBI will take hours to mobilize. They'll go through official channels. By then, Victor could be dead. She cut Maya's zip ties. So here's what we're going to do. You and me, off the books. We have 24 hours to find him before the trail goes cold. You're risking your career. He saved mine when no one else would. I'm returning the favor. Sophie's expression hardened. Can you do this? Can you become whoever you were before? Maya thought about Victor unconscious and bleeding, about Jake's hatred, about Diego watching news coverage and realizing his sister was involved. She thought about 7 years of running, of hiding, of pretending to be less than she was. Yeah, she said quietly. I can do this. Within the hour, they'd commandeered an office at Chin Technologies. Maya's fingers flew over keyboards, accessing databases she shouldn't remember how to reach. Sophie coordinated with her security contacts while Maya triangulated possibilities. Then Doc Williams walked through the door. He looked older, more silver in his hair, new lines around his eyes. But his presence was exactly as Maya remembered. Solid, reliable, haunted by the same ghost she carried. Got your message, Doc said gruffly. Figured you could use someone who knows Jake's operational patterns. You testified for me at the hearing. Maya's throat tightened. They didn't listen. I know. Doc set down a tactical bag. Time to make them listen. The ransom video arrived at midnight. Victor, bound and bloodied but alive, while a distorted voice demanded $50 million and the complete destruction of Chun Technologies' surveillance patents. But it was the personal message that froze Maya's blood. Come find us, Ghost. Let's finish what we started. Diego's text came through seconds later. Asterisk saw the news. I know it's you. Be the hero I know you are. Asterisk. Maya looked at Sophie and Doc, at the tactical plans spreading across the table, at the weapons Doc had brought. She thought about the person she'd been, the soldier who'd refused an immoral order and paid the ultimate price. Then she thought about Victor, who'd seen her broken and offered her a chance anyway, who'd visited Diego every day, who'd cleared that elevator and asked no questions, who'd looked at her like she was someone worth knowing, not someone worth forgetting. Let's bring him home, Maya said. The hunt had begun. The commandeered office at Chin Technologies had been transformed into something that looked like a military operations center mixed with a detective's war room. Maya stood before a digital display, her tactical mind fully engaged as she connected threads that had been invisible to everyone else. Sophie Kim sat at a terminal, her fingers flying across the keyboard while Doc Williams leaned against the desk, his experienced eyes tracking every detail Maya presented. "Look at the pattern," Maya said, pointing to the timeline she'd constructed. The initial surveillance on Victor started 6 months ago. The same week, Elena's quarterly reports showed her first major losses. Sophie pulled up financial records, her investigator's instincts aligning perfectly with Maya's tactical approach. Elena Zhao's company has been hemorrhaging money since Victor announced his new encryption technology. She's got maybe 3 months before bankruptcy. Doc studied the tactical breakdown of the kidnapping itself. These aren't typical corporate contractors. This is military-grade operational planning. He glanced at Maya, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You recognize the methodology." Maya's jaw tightened. She'd spent the last hour comparing the kidnapping's execution to mission reports from 7 years ago, reports she'd hoped never to see again. It's Jake Morrison's signature. The layered misdirection, the backup positions, the psychological manipulation of the target. She turned to face Doc directly. "This isn't coincidence. Elena hired the same team that ran the Black Ops unit that destroyed my career." The room fell silent. Sophie looked between them, piecing together implications. "You're saying this is personal?" "I'm saying it's connected," Maya replied, pulling up more data. "The contractors who framed my unit for civilian deaths? They work for a shell company called Blackwood Strategic Solutions. That same company received a wire transfer from one of Elena's subsidiaries 3 weeks ago. $15 million. Doc's face darkened. "Jake Morrison works for Blackwood now. Has for 5 years. Sophie leaned back in her chair, processing. So Elena hired military contractors to kidnap Victor and destroy his company's technology. But she unknowingly hired the exact team that has a personal vendetta against the woman Victor just hired as his assistant. "Not unknowingly," Maya corrected, bringing up surveillance footage from the coffee shop where she'd first met Victor. "Look at the timestamp. This video was taken the day before I spilled coffee on Victor. Now look at who's in the background." Sophie enhanced the image, and a familiar face appeared. "That's Jake Morrison. He was already watching Victor," Maya said quietly. "Which means when I got hired, Jake knew immediately. Elena hired them for business, but Jake saw an opportunity for revenge." The door opened, and Cassandra Worth entered, her usual polished appearance slightly disheveled. Sophie stood defensively, but Cassandra raised her hands. "I'm not here to cause problems. I'm here because I know something about Elena." Maya studied her carefully. "Why would you help?" "Because I don't love Victor, but I don't want him dead either," Cassandra said bluntly. "And because Elena approached me 2 months ago, trying to recruit me to spy on Victor's company. I refused, but I kept the emails." Sophie was already moving toward Cassandra with a tablet. "Show me." As Cassandra pulled up the correspondence, Tommy Nguyen burst through the door, laptop in hand, looking wildly out of place among the tactical professionals. "Maya, I found something. You said to research Elena's company structure, so I did. She's got this subsidiary that doesn't make sense. It's listed as a consulting firm, but it has no clients, no public projects, nothing." Doc took the laptop, scanning Tommy's research. "This is a Black Ops funding mechanism. I've seen this structure before in Afghanistan. You funnel money through a legitimate-looking shell to pay for operations you can't officially acknowledge." Maya pieced it together. Elena's been planning this for months. She knew Victor's tech would destroy her company, so she hired Jake's team to kidnap him. But Jake improvises. He has his own agenda. "Jake wants you," Doc said grimly. Sophie pulled up maps. "Where would he take Victor?" "Somewhere he knows," Maya said. "He used an abandoned depot before. That's where he'll be." Doc added 2 other possibilities, a warehouse complex and an old black site. They decided to strike all 3 simultaneously. Maya took the depot, certain that's where Jake would wait. 12 hours later, as night fell, Maya led her team's final prep. A sudden text from Victor's beacon gave coordinates for the black site, too conveniently timed. "It's bait," Maya realized. They stayed with the plan. When the operation began, Doc's team hit the black site and walked into heavy fire. Sophie's site was empty. At the depot, Maya found traces of setup, guards too visible, a vehicle still warm. Inside, she discovered Victor's bloody watch and Jake. He ambushed her. They fought brutally, old guilt and fury surfacing. "Marcus died because you failed him," Jake shouted. Maya countered. "He died following illegal orders." A flashbang left her disoriented. Jake nearly killed her. Then Doc's voice broke through her earpiece. We found Victor at the black site, but we're pinned down. Maya trapped Jake under falling debris and escaped, racing to help. At the black site, Doc was wounded, Sophie's team under fire, and Victor held by Elena herself. Maya stormed the building, fought through guards, and faced Elena, who held a gun to Victor's head. Maya offered herself in exchange. Let him go, she said. Victor pleaded, don't do this. I have to, Maya whispered, surrendering. Elena forced her into a getaway vehicle as Victor screamed her name into the night. Maya's breath came ragged as she staggered through the depot, blood soaking her torn shirt. Jake's boots scraped across concrete behind her, his dislocated shoulder hanging at an unnatural angle, eyes wild with hatred. You chose strangers over your family, he snarled, slamming her against a crate. On the flickering monitors, Doc and Sophie's team fought to keep Victor alive, pinned down and outnumbered. Maya's body screamed for rest, but she made her choice. Love over vengeance. I'm done fighting ghosts, she whispered, driving her elbow into Jake's jaw, rolling away. She fired upward, collapsing part of the ceiling. Debris crashed down, trapping him beneath twisted beams. His furious roar echoed as she limped toward an air vent, crawling into darkness. 30 minutes later, she burst into the industrial complex, bleeding, unrelenting. Tommy's hacked access door gave her entry. She moved like instinct, taking down contractors one by one until she reached Sophie's dwindling position. Together they pushed forward, rescuing Victor just as Elena appeared, pistol steady, desperation written across her face. You're the ghost, Elena breathed. The one who cost me everything. Realization struck. Elena's ruined contract. The mission Maya refused. Victor's stolen tech. It had always been the same web. Maya dropped her weapon. Let him go. Take me. Victor's voice broke. Don't you dare sacrifice yourself for me again. But Maya only smiled. It's not sacrifice if it's a choice. Elena hesitated, then knocked Maya unconscious as sirens wailed. When the FBI stormed in, Maya was gone. Elena had vanished into smoke. 3 days later, Maya awoke in a hospital, Victor asleep beside her bed, his hand gripping hers. No words, just relief and tears. Doc brought news. Her discharge was under review. Diego's treatment was working. Richard Chun ended the engagement. Even Cassandra came, quiet and sincere. 6 months later, Maya walked the halls of Chun Technologies, scars fading but strength intact. Victor met her for lunch, Diego laughing beside them. Let's go look at that coastal property this weekend, Victor said softly. Maya smiled. For the first time in years, she wasn't running. She was finally home. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.